What's up, everybody? It's Keyz from KeyzKeyz.com, and I want to welcome you to our new video series called Behind the Mix. And in this video series, what we do is that we go to different producers, artists, musicians, engineers, and we talk to them about what their idea is and what their process is before a project is actually created, and what their process is while it's being created, and what happens after it's already created. We talk to them about what VSTs they use, what plugins they use, what hardware they use, what software they use, what's their inspiration for writing, what techniques they use, so that we can learn them, apply them to our own music as well. In this first episode, we go visit Phillip Pearce from Sound Village Studios in Frankfort, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is the master engineer there. He's a musician, he's a producer, and he's going to talk to us about what plugins and VSTs that he actually uses to bring his projects to come to life. So, without further ado, let's go.
Keyz Productions.
Welcome to Sound Village Studios. My name is Phillip Pearce. Today we're going to be talking about some plugins, working on vocals, and just trying to get that sound that you need to have that. So Sound Village has been around for about 3 years now. We've been a studio. High-level audio engineers here, and everybody that's working here at Sound Village is also producers and musicians. So it's just people that love music that have come together to form a village to create a sound that we feel like will hit the industry and make some waves. So welcome. And today what we'll be using is Protools as the DAW. Sound Village here, we use almost every DAW that's available. Logic, Pro Tools, Harrison Mix Bus, Ableton Live. But today, for this session, we'll be using Pro Tools 10.3 and working through a Universal Audio Apollo Twin Duo. And then coming out of the Yamaha HS7s and the HS10 down here for the sub. So, and then we also have the Personas monitor station doing all of the monitoring and attenuation and stuff like that. So yeah, we can get started. Alright, so today we'll be working on a record that has yet to be released, but it's by an artist that works out of our studio. Her name is Dami Jo. The record is called Lovin' Monsters, and you'll be able to find it on iTunes and all of the other major media markets out there, so be on the lookout for that. But what I want to show everybody is basically like how you treat a vocal in terms of compression, EQ, and maybe we'll even go through my vocal chain so that people can see my process for mixing. So one of the first things you want to do is get your gain structure set up properly. So this was all recorded at the Lab Philly, which is Craig White's studio. So if you need some high quality live full band instrumentation, that's a great studio to check out. And gain structure is super important, because if you have stuff coming in too hot or not hot enough, what people don't know is that the actual plugins have a gain structure built into it. So it responds differently based on how much audio amplitude is coming into the plugin. So for instance, like something like an 1176 from Waves, the CLA 76 has its own gain structure set up in it. So if you're feeding it too much volume, it'll have a different tonal reaction, and if you're not feeding it enough, it'll have another tonal reaction. So you have to figure out where your happy medium is to get a dope sound out of the recording. So I'll just let you hear it without anything on it, and then we'll go into hearing the vocal with some of the effects.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy and a girl, and they fell in love. It was the starry summer night and the moon was full. Seemed like a picture perfect match. It must too good to be true.
Alright, so one of the first main things you want to do when you're treating a vocal is EQ and compression, and you can do them interchangeably. You can have your EQ in your chain first, or you can have your compressor in the chain first. And that's another important thing about working with DAWs that a lot of people don't know, is that your chain has to have a certain structure to it, or your audio will suffer sometimes. So there's general rules of thumb, even though there's no absolute rules. The general rule of thumb is that you either EQ or compress first, and depending on what type of response you want to get out of the audio. So I'm going to compress first so that I can get everything at a line level that is comfortable for me to listen to over top of the music. And then I'll do some EQ, and then we'll go down the chain. Alright, so compression is first. And this plugin that we have up here is Wave CLA76. Most compressors either emulate an old style compressor or have some of the same functions of these emulations. So what I'll do is I'll just go over what this one does real quickly, and then we'll start to hear what it actually does to the audio. So this plugin has a couple features: input, output, attack, release, and ratio. And then there's some monitoring, metering buttons over here on the right so that you can see what's actually happening to the audio. So this plugin has what's called a fixed threshold. So a fixed threshold basically means that you're actually just adding gain into the plugin, and then that threshold that's set, once you hit it, it activates the plugin. And then you have the output gain level so that you can make up gain or attenuate the gain on the audio. And then there's the attack, which means how quickly the plugin will start working once it hits the threshold, and then the release is how quickly it lets the plugin go once the audio has been under the threshold. So hopefully that makes sense. I think I explained it as well enough as possible. But the best way to work on plugins is to actually hear what they do. So what I like to do is use extremes. So sometimes I'll put a plugin all the way to the extreme just to hear what happens, and then I'll take it down to the extreme to hear what it does to the audio, and then I'll find out where it sounds the best to me. So that's one of the main things that I think every engineer should do if they don't know their plugins, is just pop one in and just start messing with the controls until you start to hear what it actually does to the audio, because the main thing that makes this process for us as engineers work is our ears. And if you can't hear the difference, and if that difference isn't directly benefiting the audio, then you're doing something wrong. So so always, as a rule of thumb, just try and see what that plugin does and hear what it can do to your audio, so you know in the future what you want it to do when that time comes, when that inspiration hits. So okay, so here we go with the 1176. So this is extremely low on the input.
And they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full.
Until you get some type of the extremes again.
He's something like a criminal, breaking it in a ring. I'll probably never love again. Well, I died 1,000 times when you left me high and dry, and you.
Okay, so, and then one of the general rules of thumb is once you kind of tune in and dial in your plugin, bypass it so that you can hear what it does to the audio immediately. That's one of the things that you always want to make sure that you're doing is checking to see if what you're doing is making the audio better, or is it taking away from the sound that you're looking for. And then after a while you'll get used to it and you won't have to do it as much, but it's always good to just check and see if you're benefiting the process.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love.
So that's on, and now it's bypassed.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love.
So if you can hear it, what happened basically was I added more presence to the vocal by compressing the level so that what was actually lower in the song filled up with some gain space, and everything that was hitting the compressor was brought down so that we start matching the volumes from the low information to the louder information. So that's generally what you want to do with compression, is get something at what's a controllable level. And that's another rule of thumb in mixing, is that we do all of this so that we can have as much control over the audio as possible, so that we can make it and dictate what it does to our records and our material. So So being able to control the audio is super, super important. So yeah, so then next after this would be some EQ. So I like to pull up one of my favorite EQs. It's called the Fab Filter Pro Q. This guy has like a bunch of super cool features. I don't want to go through all of them because it would take a really long time, but generally what I do is I'll put on an analyzer so that I know at first what the audio is doing in the frequency range.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl
and then I use that information to kind of give me a launching pad. Again, I use your ears because oftentimes what can happen is you'll get a little too attached to seeing a visual representation of what the music is doing. And you want to always use your ears to make sure that whatever's happening is something that sounds good and not looks good because you know some rules in mixing. Like, you know, some people always say scoop out 500K or 500 hertz because that's where the mud is, or add around the 2K range because that's where the presence in the vocal is, or add a shelf on 10K because that's where the air is. But if it doesn't sound good, those rules of thumb don't matter. So as long as it sounds good, that's what you're looking for. If it sounds good to your ears, it doesn't matter what the rules are. So I'll play it again and I'll do some quick EQ attenuations and boosts, and then we'll see where we get.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full.
Doing to the audio. So band being the EQ that's currently active. So and I'll use that to find those trouble spots where I'll attenuate the audio. And normally that's what you want to do as well. That's another general rule of thumb that you can follow if it sounds good, is you listen to the audio that you have and you cut frequencies and gain out of those out of what sounds bad first, and then that'll allow you to only have the frequencies or the tonal qualities that you want in the record.
Hey, once upon a the starry summer night and the moon was full, seemed like a picture perfect match. Now, bringing it in a ring, I'll probably never love again. Well, girl and they fell in. Hey, long ago there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full, seemed like a picture perfect match, almost too good to be true. He's something like a criminal, bringing it in a read. Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl.
So I just bypassed it a couple times, and that's what I'm looking for. Is did I add anything to the audio? So from what I hear, there's a lot less low energy in there, so it kind of cleans up the tonal space, and it allows for what's happening in the track to have its own space in the low frequencies, and then boosting around like what's that, about 16K to get some presence in her vocal. And then I did another shelf EQ at about 14,000 hertz to add some of that high energy back into the sound. So then after that, everything else is a matter of taste. Now that I have a proper EQ, a proper compression that I feel like gives me a good level, everything I do at this point is a matter of taste. Now, some people have a specific vocal chain where they're doing EQ, compression, another compressor, de-essing, and limiting the vocal, which is all cool, and you can do all of those things. But at this point, I like to use some of my own creative inspiration to see where we can take the audio. Because if we can improve it, you don't always need to have a channel strip that's go-to. Allow yourself to have those moments of inspiration. So I'll just take a listen to it a couple times, and then I'll see where I can take the audio, if I can take it to another level.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full. Seemed like a picture perfect match, almost too good to be true. He sounded like a criminal.
So what I'm hearing on this vocal right now is there's a lot of sibilance in the vocal, which is like the S's and the T's sound really poignant in the song. So what I'll do is I'll just take those out. So this is the Fab Filter Pro DS. If you don't have a Pro DS, there's a bunch of de-esser plugins. I like this one because it's got some visual feedback along with some really cool ways to attack the de-essing avenue. So I'll just play it and see what it does to the audio first, and then if I need to affect it, then I'll go in there and tweak the plugins. But the reason I like this one so much is because almost as soon as you turn it on, it does what you want it to do. It's very musical and it's very natural.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full. Seemed like...
Right, so that's what it on, and already I like the sound of it, so I probably won't even mess with the dial-ins and the buttons and stuff. So here it is with it off. See if you can hear the difference.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love.
And with it on.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full.
Cool. So I feel like we got a lot of the sibilance out of there. And like I said, it's a super musical plugin, so almost as soon as you put it on, you won't really need to mess with the features and functions of the plugin because it sits right. So then after that, I'll just continue to listen to the piece, and this is the expedited version, but I'll literally listen to the verse probably about 4 or 5, maybe more times, just to see how everything is sounding and if it's coming together. I change my volumes a lot, so that's why I like this Presonus monitor station, because you can literally, there's a dimmer button on it, and I can dial in the exact amount of attenuation I want, so I can hear it at a comfortable level, and then I can have a much quieter level to listen at to see what's happening even at the lowest amplitude coming out of the speakers. So I'll just demonstrate that as well.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love.
So I'll listen back to that back and forth, because one of the things that happens is as you add volume to your listening space, our ears recognize that and try to compensate for certain things. So, for instance, as you turn up volume, our ears literally EQ the sound of the audio coming in to fit in a more comfortable way for us to understand that information that's coming into our own personal ears. So one of the ways that we counteract that is by turning the volume down in our listening space so that we're trying to listen, so that our brain isn't automatically switching certain things up. So like, for instance, when you walk into a cafeteria and you hear a lot of people talking, you can't make out the words because our brain literally meshes all of that together. It's called masking. It masks all of it together so that we don't go completely crazy trying to understand every conversation. The same thing happens in audio. So if you have too much frequency buildup in certain areas, or if it's too loud, which means there's too many frequencies coming into your listening space, into your ears, our ears literally begin blending frequencies together. So it's always good to listen at different volumes as much as possible, at a comfortable volume, and then also at a very low volume, so you can constantly check your mix against your own self as well. So with that, there's another plugin that I like to use. I'm using a lot of Waves and a lot of Fab Filter plugins, but like I said, a lot of these plugins are accessible in regular Pro Tools DAWs or whatever your stock DAW is. Even if you don't have these plugins, you can pretty much find these in find similar plugins in your stock DAW. So this, what I'm about to put on, is called the C6. This was called a multiband compressor. So basically what this multiband compressor does is it's like an EQ and a compressor at the same time. So I like to use this to do a little bit of de-essing, and I also like to use it because if I like certain frequencies or character colors in the client's voice, the C6 allows me to simply focus on those frequencies and compress them. And that way I can control those frequencies and then add more gain specifically to that range of the client's voice, or do the opposite. I can take out certain frequencies that I know are harsh in the audio, and the C6 allows me to do that very quickly, and it sounds good. So I'll just play it, and then I'll mess around with the plugin a little bit and see what we get.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love.
So just another little caveat. Normally what I do is so most plugins come with presets. I'm not tethered to presets at all most of the time, but I do like to use certain presets just to give me a launching pad, and that's not something that's totally against the rules. You know, sometimes people try to make it seem as if you're not a good engineer if you use a preset, but normally some of those presets will give you some inspiration, and that's all it is. That's always the goal, is like what's going to inspire you to work and to create something that sounds good but is different. So that's super critical, and especially with the C6, I like to use a preset to kind of give me a launching pad to see where I want to take the vocal from there. So I'll just load that preset up. If you have the C6, it is the Pooch Vocal. It has some standard attenuation that's going on. I don't know if you guys understand the plugin, but essentially it has some attenuation going on in certain frequencies that are commonly used in a vocal that might turn out to be harsh, and then it has some boost in the upper frequencies to give it more presence and more bite on the vocal. So depending on how this audio responds to this plugin, I'll change the features on the plugin to match what it is that I want to hear out of the vocal.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a boy who met a girl and they fell in love. 'Twas the starry summer night and the moon was full. Seemed like a picture perfect match, almost too good to be true. He sounded like a criminal, bringing it in a real. I'll probably never love again. Well,
So yeah, so I'm getting some compression there. It kind of cleaned up some of the lower frequencies even more, and added a little bit more presence in the mid to high frequencies to kind of give to get the vocal to sit on top of the instrumentation a little bit more. And then I'll run this a bunch of times, re-level everything so that the level of the vocal is nice and right in the middle of the record where I want it to be. And that takes a couple listens, so I'll probably do that a little bit and see what we get.
Hey, once upon a time not long ago, there was a like a picture perfect match, almost too good to be true. He's something
Rule of
like
thumb
a
when I'm
criminal.
mixing is I'm constantly going back to plugins, constantly moving things around. I kind of like to mix in a circle. So I'll get something sounding the way I want it to sound, and then I'll listen for something in the record that complements it. Like, so for instance, the piano is very jazzy and very present in this song, and I think that'll be one of the main instruments. So I'll probably mix the piano next or the drums next, just to kind of give her a space around her. And that for me is where I would generally go next with whatever instrument I want to mix next, and I keep myself aware of that. So I try to listen to the entire project in a circle, so that after I get done the vocal, then I'll go and I'll mix the drums. But then maybe the way that I like the drums against her vocal changes the way that I want to mix the vocal. So I'll go back and change some of the plugins, and now I'm just always making sure that my vocal is the center of the mix, and everything else is just being mixed around it constantly, until I get the final quality that I want. Sound all of the instruments and they're balanced, because you can get into a lot of trouble by listening just to one instrument constantly and then getting that to sound right in one way, and then moving on to another instrument, putting it in solo, mixing that. It doesn't allow for the record to have a cohesion that's critical in mixing. That's the whole purpose we mix, is to give the audio that we've been given a cohesive sound. So from there, I'll probably do a couple more things to the vocal. But that all, again, is based on inspiration, and that can happen at any point in the mixing process. But the first thing I normally do is try to get my control volume. That's what I normally call it. Is like the volume that I know the only thing I have to do at this point is touch the fader and get it to a specific level, because it's going to sit at whatever that level is. I just need to figure out where against the rest of the instruments that is. So that's the control volume that I like to get on a vocal. And depending on what I'm mixing, I either do that with the vocal first, or I get the drums at that level, because both of those are the foundation of all music. So if the rhythm has a dope sound to it, or the vocal has a dope sound to it, I can guarantee you that mixing the record will be super easy and almost automatic after a certain point.
Thousand times when you left me high and dry, and you move like you do no wrong. What you gonna pay for fucking with me? Well, fuck shit up, my heart, you broke it into, my heart, you broke it into. Well, I and you move like you do no wrong. What you gonna pay? Well, when you left me high and dry, and yeah, I'm gone to look at the when you left me high and dry, and you move like my heart, you broke it too, and you created a monster.
So that was just some quick tips and pointers on vocal editing and vocal mixing, my chain. Hopefully you enjoyed what you heard. Hopefully it was helpful and beneficial. Don't follow anything that you see verbatim. Just use it as a way to cultivate what it is that you like to hear out of tuning in. This is Sound Village Studios. You can find us at Sound Village